Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. We are going to be discussing transition to the middle school. I want to start with introductions. My name is Peg Laswicki. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services in Arlington Heights School District 25. We have a team here tonight that will be talking to you about the transition process from 5th to 6th grade. And I'm going to hand it over to Kelly Clayson to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Kelly Klassen, Student Services Coordinator. Nice to see you all. Next is the principal of Thomas Middle School.
Hello, good evening. My name is Lori Nemowitz. I'm excited to be here with all of you tonight. We have a team of teachers from Thomas. We're going to start with Yvette Rayberger.
Hi, my name is Yvette Rayberger. I'm the 7th grade teacher at Thomas Middle School for the resource classroom. Next is Nina.
Hi, my name is Nina Koufalias. I'm the 8th grade Epsilon Special Ed Resource Teacher at Thomas. Next is Kaylee.
Hi, I'm Kaylee O'Neill. I am an Extended Resource Program teacher at Thomas Middle School. And then Ashley, you're up.
Hi, I'm Ashley Raybell. I'm the occupational therapist at Thomas.
All right, and now we're going to pass it over to Dr. Morrison, the principal over at South Middle School.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great evening tonight. I bring you a team of teachers from South, an excellent group of individuals, starting with Mary Beth Delaney.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Delaney. I'm the Individualized Learning Program ILP teacher at South. Annie?
Hi, I'm Annie Swiderski, and I am one of the ERP Extended Resource Program teachers at South. Next, we'll go to Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Moser, speech language pathologist at South, and I will pass it to Deanna.
Hi, I'm Deanna Nabar. I'm one of the 6th grade resource teachers at South, and I'll pass it to Rosanna.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Woldman, and I'm one of the social workers at South.
And I think that's everybody. So again, welcome and thank you for being here. What the agenda is for the evening, I know it's a little different than when we are in person, but since we are doing this virtually, we do have a presentation and you will be seeing that on the screen. Ms. Clayson will be navigating the presentation, but on the bottom of the Zoom window, there's a Q&A. If you have questions and you would like them answered, feel free to type them in the Q&A piece and I will address questions. Either I can type in some answers or also throughout the presentation, if it's appropriate, I'll ask that question out loud for parents who put in a question and also at the end of the presentation, I may just go through all of the questions and ask the panelists at that point so that we can answer those questions. So again, thank you, and we will get started. The reason why we are doing this evening is because we want to ensure a smooth transition for our 5th to 6th graders. We recognize that this can cause some anxiety for our students as well as you, the parents. So we are trying to do as much as we can to ease some of that anxiety because we know change is difficult. And one of the things that we do is tonight's event so that we can have a Q&A session for you so that we can answer any questions, so that you gain a better understanding of what we do for our 5th to 6th graders. You will get more information too when it comes to moving into the 6th grade. You will have an individual transition meeting with your team and some members of the new team at the middle school. So I promise any and all information will be shared. Tonight's presentation is very much more in general kind of transition things. Individual type of questions that you may have for your son or daughter can be directed to your current teacher, your child's current teacher, or a middle school teacher. And at the end of this presentation, there are names of student services coordinators that can also help you with any specific individualized questions that you might have that pertains to your child. So moving on, I'm gonna, Lori Nomowitz, you're up.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the timeline here. Right now, we are in the process of planning the meetings between the elementary schools and the middle schools. And then coming up here in the next couple of months, March, April, and May, we will actually host those transition IEP meetings. We will also do some student tours, and we're looking at having the students come visit our buildings as well. Obviously, during this time of COVID, things might look a little bit different, but I promise you that you will get some good insights on what our buildings are doing right now, whether it be via video or actually having some time to come into the buildings. So during those transition IEP meetings, that is a time when you as the parent come, and your elementary team as well as the middle school team will be there as well. From the middle school, you will likely see myself or another administrator, and then we'll bring one of our special education teachers. It might be that we bring a special education teacher from the resource program or the extended resource program. And regardless of the teacher that we bring with us to that meeting, that doesn't determine the placement that we as a team decide for your child. It just may be the staff member who was available to attend the meeting at that time. During the month of June is when we start to transfer all those files over. But I will say that we share a lot of information before June even hits. And then in the month of August, typically we will open up the buildings and have an opportunity for students to come in and set up lockers and things like that. At that point, your case manager will be contacting you directly just before school starts to introduce themselves. And then of course in August, school begins. I do want to say that we take a lot of care with our transition timeline, and we want to make this process as seamless and as enjoyable as we can for all of you. So please do ask questions. And we'll move it along to our next slide. Dr. Morrison.
I think you're on mute.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. As I was just trying to say is that we never have a typical day here at either South or Thomas. So a unique title to this page, but for most kids, we come in and we have a 10 period day. Most periods are 40 minutes in length. The first period being a home base class, which I will talk a little bit further about that in a minute. But then the other 9 class periods, you have your core classes, which is math, science, social studies, and ELA, or you probably refer to as language arts classes. The language arts classes is actually 2 periods in a row, so it's an 80-minute class period. But within that, students typically come into school and they go to their home base or advisory class, and that's about 17 minutes in length. And in the home base, it's here at South, we have 1 teacher and a small number of students. Over at Thomas, they have 2 teachers with a regular size class. And what we do is we work on social emotional learning or executive functional skills and activities. It can be taught by either a special education teacher or a regular education teacher. This is not tied to anybody's special education minutes, or it's a special education class. Just a regular class period that all of our students attend. During the day, your child will also be going to PE. We'll have PE every day where they will change. We also will have creative arts, and how creative arts works, at least at 6th grade. Our 6th grade students get a taste of every class. And so they get to go to art and music and DAD and all the rest of those fun classes to kind of get a taste of what middle school creative arts is like. And then later on down the line in 7th and 8th grade, they'll be able to choose which elective they would like. And I think I covered my section here. So there we go.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and explain to the parents that are watching the continuum of service. So the district has a continuum of service that also matches what the middle school has. So I'm just going to click here on this document, and I will show you the complete continuum of service from least to most support of service for all students. So we begin with students that are using what is called a consult model of service. And a consult model, if you are a parent that has a child with an IEP, you know that that is when a consultant, typically a related service provider, just does some consult time with the teachers for your child. And there is some information as to what that entails. Additionally, we have what's called an itinerant service. Itinerant services are for students that have specific area of need support. So that could include speech and language, occupational therapy, social work. It can also include the supports from our NSSEO cooperative. That could be from a vision specialist or a hearing specialist as well. Next in the amount of support for a child would be a co-taught placement. And a co-taught placement entails certain classes, and that varies from year to year depending on the student's needs. But both Thomas and South Middle Schools typically offer some variety of ELA, which is English Language Arts reading block class, could be a co-taught class. So could the math class typically. And what that means is that there's both a general education and a special education teacher co-teaching that class. The special educator that pushes into that class is the person that is responsible for the goals and minutes of service while in that class for your child. More support than that would be what is called the resource program. So the resource program is typically intended for students that are close to grade level, no more than 1 to 1.5 years behind. There's more information here. I know I don't want to go through everything because I know that my teachers are going to go into more depth as our program here tonight continues. But this slide will be available for you all to be able to click on to go back to and review the continuum of service. Moving more supportive than that is what we call the Extended Resource Program. And you'll hear a lot of acronyms in special education, and this is what we would refer to as ERP. So if your child is in the ERP program, that does mean extended resource. It is like resource, but it's for students that are a little bit more below grade level and do need a higher level of support. Moving beyond that, we have what we call Extended Resource Program 2. So there's even an extension due to the number of students that we have right now at both Thomas and South Middle Schools. Recently, we opened up another block of classes for the Extended Resource Program students. So we have what's called Extended Resource Program 1 and Extended Resource Program 2, and it's for those students that are 2 to 4 years below grade level. The most supportive classroom that is within our two buildings is what is called the Individualized Learning Program setting. So that's called the ILP. And this is for students that are working on a lot of functional and daily living skills, and they tend to be 3 or more years below grade level. These are also students that may have some augmentative communication devices. We do service all of our students that are within our district boundaries. And if we do not have the classrooms within the building settings, we do seek additional supports. So beyond that, we would have public therapeutic day school, private therapeutic day school, residential placements, and home hospital services to ensure that we meet the needs of all of our students within the district. Okay. All right. So I'm going to then shift to the teaching staff and the related service staff that are here tonight, because they want to go a little bit more in depth with all of these programs that are at Thomas and South. The resource program, the extended resource program, individualized learning program, speech and language, and additional supports. So the next person that is going to be speaking to you tonight is going to be Yvette.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to talk a little bit about the resource program at both middle schools. Within the resource program, there is a class called Resource Period. It is a little bit confusing when you hear resource program and resource period, but I want to talk a little bit about the resource period. So within the resource period, you would have a teacher reaching out to kids, doing some pre-teaching and reteaching of core concepts in all those content areas of the reading, the writing, the math, science, and or social studies. And then this class is based on individualized goals. Students might have goals in there related to executive functioning, or they might have goals in there related to their academic needs. It is a small group instruction class. They'll receive organizational support. We'll spend time how to prepare for tests and quizzes. And then just students who typically are speech only, meaning they only have an IEP for their speech needs, do not typically qualify for this resource class period unless they do have academic goals. It is taught by a special education teacher, and the resource class is in place of a world language class. Typically, you'd see that. Within the resource program, we also have some small group classes that are available to students. The small group class would be an ELA, that language arts class, or the math class. And if a student did not require the small group class for ELA or math, they might be in what we would call the general education class with a teaching assistant or co-taught. And the co-taught class is where we have a special education teacher and a general education teaching that class. Typically at the middle schools, the classes that tend to be co-taught tend to be the ELA class. And then the science and social studies tend to have more of the teaching assistants in those classes. And then my next slide. So a little bit more about the resource program. So when we look at the resource program, we offer access to general education classes as appropriate based on a student's academic needs and needs in their IEP. All students have access to that home base, or we'll call it a homeroom classroom. They can have access to creative arts, PE and health, and a lunch period. We talk about the resource program in the middle schools as a single grade classroom, meaning that their resource teacher would change from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade. Sometimes we might have where we rotate staff around, but we're not rotating it for the students' needs. We're just making changes that might happen. But typically, you're just going to see a student move 1 year with a 6th grade teacher, and then 7th grade, they have a different resource teacher, and 8th grade, they have another different resource teacher. Within the resource program, I was talking about how they might be involved in some general education classes with support, or small group classes like the ELA or the math class they might receive, special education support within there. Again, it's just depending on their individualized educational needs. We'll move to slide 9. And I think that's Nina.
Yeah, so within the resource program, we also offer co-taught, as it was mentioned before. These classes are designed for students who need access to the general education curriculum. Concepts routinely are reinforced and retaught in the general education setting. The co-taught classes are a blend of general education and special education students. And again, that class is taught by a special education teacher and a general education teacher. Co-taught offerings change yearly based on the demand and student needs. They typically offer co-taught classes for math and ELA. At times we may offer them for science or social studies, but again, it just depends on the student's needs. The integration opportunities, well, offerings differ by building and year based on the student needs. Again, as appropriate, students may attend general education core and content classes, such as math, science, English. This co-taught class will take the place of their general education academic class in that subject area. We'll go on to slide 10. The resource program also offers the small group classes. These classes are designed for students who need slower pacing and instruction, pre-teaching and reteaching of curriculum. They're offered for both math and reading language arts, and they are taught by a special education teacher. There may be a teaching assistant depending on the needs of the students, but always taught by a special education teacher. Sometimes we may use the general education curriculum or an alternative curriculum. Students attend general education, science, social studies, and health class. And again, during that science, social studies, and health, students, again, depending on their need, may be placed with a teaching assistant. Often we have kids who need to be placed in a second reading or a second math class. This will be in place of a science or social studies class to further support skill development. Students may attend either an ELA, math, or both, depending on their goals. Currently, writing is blended into our reading instruction. And again, if we're using the general education curriculum, the pacing is always modified, and students may only have testing accommodations. World language versus resource period. If you have a resource class that takes place of the world language, if a student no longer requires a resource period, a world language course could be considered. There is no world language requirement prior to high school, which I think is really important to know. Colleges typically require 2 years of world language at the high school level, regardless of what the middle school participation is. Again, and there is no world language requirement for high school for graduation. Placement and resource will be determined at the transition meeting. Speech-only students should select a language. If you are unsure if your child will be in a resource period, please sign up for a language to hold a spot in your child's preferred language class. Typically, students no longer eligible for resource will remain in the resource class through the end of the year or transition to a second creative arts class. Students will attend world language the following year as part of the regular schedule, and students will be placed in a beginning level world language or like a mixed grade level type of a classroom. World language is an academic class with writing assignments, reading, homework, quizzes, and tests. It can impact the load for students who already are struggling academically. Many of our students who take world language still place in the first year in high school. Okay.
So I can see that there's a question in the box, and I hope it's okay that I just jump in and address it. But I can see that somebody is asking about, what if you want to take a world language instead of a PE class? And just as Mrs. Kofalius was saying, that academic rigor piece is intense. It can be intense when it comes to the world language, and especially as you're transitioning in as a sixth grader, to add that additional component in addition to everything they're already trying to manage as a sixth grader, it really can be a challenging situation. We have done it from time to time, but we are very, very careful about that piece. And in terms of it replacing PE, I'd be very careful with that, because the PE component is required every day by law. But in addition, the students really need that time where they can, have that type of play with their peers. And our students typically get a lot of enjoyment out of the physical education classes. So it's definitely something that we are happy as administrators to talk to parents about, this world language piece, because we understand your child might be very excited about it because their peers may be excited, but we're happy to talk with you more about it. I just feel like that's an important piece to mention. So sorry about that. Go on to the next slide.
Okay, I'm now going to talk to you about the Extended Resource Program, which is offered at South and Thomas. The program is typically designed for students who are 2 to 3 years below grade level in all academic areas. Students are able to attend whole group academic classes within a small group setting. And students in our Extended Resource or ERP program require special education for more than 50% of their day. The Extended Resource Program has a high academic focus. We use a research-based alternate curriculum. students had the opportunity to attend general education classes with teaching assistant support as appropriate. And students do not participate in world language. In addition, extended resource includes special education social studies. Many students have a third English language arts class, ELA, in place of science to really enforce those reading and writing skills. Next slide, please. The extended resource rooms are multi-grade, so you'll have 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders, or a mixed combination in each room. We have no more than 12 students per class, and then there's TAs, teaching assistants, in there as well. Our program may include push-in or push-out or pull-out for speech and language, social work, OT, and PT, so those related services are heavily integrated with us. Students utilize technology to help support academic courses such as reading, writing, organization, and or note-taking. Some students may require assistive technology. Students do participate in IAR testing, and we focus heavily on positive behavior supports with a strong focus on student skills, problem solving, and self-advocacy. We also do go at a modified pace. So even in addition to the special education curriculum that we use, we go at a modified pace, and a lot of times students are placed in ability level groupings. Our students do typically also participate in MAP testing. The nice thing about extended resource is there are fewer transitions throughout the day and fewer staff with whom the students interact. So it's a much more kind of insulated group, and they really get to know everyone on the team. At South, our social worker teaches an alternative health class. So a little more on that. Some students will attend PE all year round and participate in the alternative health class rather than missing 1/4 of PE to attend the general education health class. So we kind of decide that during the transition meetings, whether or not your student will have the extra 1/4 of PE or move to health. And we'll go to the next slide.
All right, so adding on to some more about the extended resource program, students that are placed into the ERP program do have opportunities for integration with their grade level peers. So it's really nice for them to branch out outside of their classroom that they're normally in for their core content classes. So they will be integrated for creative arts classes, their PE classes, their homeroom and advisory period, as well as lunch. And then they also can be integrated into co-taught or small group classes, just depending on their needs, how their articulation meetings go, their goals, and their skill level. They may be pushed out. And like Yvette and Nina were saying, those classes are taught by resource teachers, and they are taught with students who have similar needs to them and are still supported by special education teachers. That's all I have. I think you're on mute, Mary Beth.
All right, in the individualized learning program, the students are typically more globally involved, where they have are 3 or more years below grade level in all academic areas. And most of them also require speech and language and social work support. Some of them also require adaptive PE, physical therapy or occupational therapy. So we really do a lot in a transdisciplinary model where there's push-in and pull-out services throughout the day. And we do meet with our therapists on a daily basis or weekly basis to discuss children and do what we can to program for them most effectively. The students are in special education for more than 50% of their day. They have small group instruction. We have a lot of multisensory activities, We use visuals throughout the day. We use technology throughout the day. There's individualized iPads for most of our students, as well as Chromebooks for all students to use. And we have a variety of assistive technology services and applications that assist them with their reading and writing using those devices. What transdisciplinary model looks like for us at this point in time, like currently at South, we have our social worker and our speech pathologist do run one class a week where they have all of the students and they do a social language group. Our speech pathologist does a language group 1 period a week, and our social worker teaches that alternative health and safety class where they focus on personal safety, boundaries, hygiene, cyberbullying, how to make friends, and we do that throughout the day. Our students do take that alternative health and safety class, so they are in PE for the entire year, which is a nice chance for them to be social with their peers. We have positive behavior supports as part of our program, and then any student that requires additional services or additional motivation or additional behavior intervention, we can provide that as well. Next slide. Okay, just like the ERP class, the ILP class is multi-grade, so we have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in one class. There are 1 or 2 teaching assistants that are assigned to the program rather than to individual students, and they help when, as Annie said, because we group students as best we can at their ability levels within our classroom. Some of the students participate in IAR. Most participate in the alternative assessment or the dynamic learning maps assessment, and our students don't take the map, the district-wide map testing. It just doesn't give us any additional information that's helpful in their programming. We have sensory activities and movement breaks throughout the day. Some of our students have sensory diets that we pay attention to. Both buildings have access to motor rooms where students can go to either increase their energy levels or try to decrease their energy levels. We do a lot of functional activities, and we focus on independence and activities of daily living. Both at South and at Thomas, we have a life skills class in place of social studies, where we have different units that we structure around things that occur in real life. We might do a shopping trip. We might do prepare for a holiday, or teach the children how to set the table properly. In a typical year, we go on about 1 field trip a month, focusing on functional skills, but right now we're not able to do that. We have social studies and science embedded into the curriculum. Students don't typically attend social studies or science classes. Okay, but within our day, students are with their gen ed peers as much as possible. They're all out for creative arts with teaching assistant support. Again, they go through PE with their gen ed peers 1 period every single day, which is a little different than it is at the elementary school. Some students are mainstreamed or in general education classes for their homeroom or home-based activities. They're all out for lunch, and they participate with assistants in extracurricular activities. Sometimes students eat with their grade level, and sometimes they'll eat together with the gen ed peers, but not necessarily with their exact grade level. So our goal is to have students in the least restrictive environment. So as a student progresses, they might move to extended resource, or they might even be able to go out to a gen ed class with support.
Okay, so students transitioning from communications are included in their homeschool ILP. We have support available from NSSEO, board certified behavioral analysts available to the district. They will assist with structured learning, aerialist teaching, data collection, communications, and some social skills training, sensory integration, and also general and specific problem solving. We also have a NSSEO BCBA, a board certified behavioral analyst assigned to each building for behavioral support as well.
Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about speech and language services at the middle school. Speech and language services are available throughout the whole continuum of services, whether it's just speech and language only or whether you're in the ILP program. We are providing those supports, and it is a continuum of services. So if you're just getting speech and you have a speech only or speech and language only IEP, it's typically a pull-out model. You are missing an academic class in order to receive those services. We support articulation, language skills, social language, fluency, things like that, voice that are impacting their educational functioning. And what's different at the middle school is that we try to rotate the schedule. So student doesn't have the same speech time every week like they typically do in elementary school. We don't want them missing the same class every week because we don't want them missing those academic instruction. So one week they might miss fourth period, the next week they might miss 10th period. And so we rotate that so that it's changing and they are coming differently every week. Or we also do lunch groups. That way they're just not missing those classes and getting behind. If students are in the resource program, it's very similar. We support language skills related to that core curriculum. If their support is in their IEP, they can receive those services. It is, again, typically a pull-out support, and they come out of that resource class if they have it. And the reason for that is then they're not missing their other academic classes and they don't have to get behind in those areas or worry about missing something in class. We also do some lunch groups depending on the types of goals that we are addressing. If students are in the extended resource program, again, it's very similar. This time services could be pull out. Sometimes it's push into the classroom. I know some of the teachers mentioned there were some language groups going on, and there could be a focus on social skill development, but really you are supporting those language skills as they are related to those core academic classes with the modified curriculum. I want to add that if you're in that ERP program, the speech SLP or the speech pathologist is very collaborative. I heard Mary Beth mention they meet as a team. That happens at both schools. They're talking about kids. They're working on how that language is impacting them throughout the day and how they can be best supported. I think the next slide is with ILP. So same thing, if a student's in the ILP program, they typically may have more support in the area of speech and language. We're addressing those functional language skills, those life skills, teaching more social skills, activities or training in that area. And the speech path typically will go with them on those community outings when they're happening. It's working on that functional language in person, on the spot. I mean, that's what's very motivating for those students and giving them a chance to practice. Again, very collaborative with that teacher, with the social worker, with the OT, and there could be some push-in support or pull-out support, again, depending on goals, minutes, and needs of the students. Rosanna, I think you have the next slide.
Yes, thank you. We also have some additional supports, and those would be occupational therapy and physical therapy, and those work in a push-in and push-out model of support. In addition, we have social work, which again is also push-in or pull-out. We do small group for kids who are in need of that. Usually those small groups tend to be during lunch, or we can pull kids out for individual support if that's needed as well. And then we also do sometimes like issue specific support groups. For example, if we have a lot of kids just working on some anxiety coping skills, we might do something like that. Or if we have a lot of kids, maybe sometimes dealing with grief and loss. So sometimes we do those kind of support groups, and those tend to be during the lunch, but sometimes just like speech, we will rotate through the day if we need to, so that the child doesn't miss the same period every week. There's also adaptive physical education, and that's a direct or consult services in the general education class. So they will go into the PE classroom and do adaptive PE during their actual PE class. And that's TA support is available for daily PE as needed. And then we also do have support for vision and hearing, and that's provided by the NSSEO staff. I think that's it for my.
Yep. All right. So we do offer some additional support as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about that right now. One of the great things about District 25 is that we are very rich in resources, and that allows us to do things like our response to intervention programming. We offer support classes for math and in reading. Those are available to general education students and special education students. So while your child may have a math goal on their IEP, if we find that your child is struggling a bit in reading, it's possible that your child could take a reading RTI class. Each of our buildings has a reading specialist in addition to math specialists. We also have various other school supports depending on the teachers. There are some teachers who meet with students during the lunch hour. Oftentimes we run homework club after school, or the teachers host office hours after school. And then we have the super fun things that make middle school really great. And those are the supports that include things like extracurriculars. We really want your children to come to our buildings and not just focus on the academic piece, but to get involved with their peers in our extracurricular programs. And those are things that are opened up to all students, whether your child has an IEP or not. All students are welcome to join the various different clubs that we offer, as well as our athletic teams. As a sixth grader, one of great ways to get started with middle school is to join our cross country team. All sixth graders, seventh and eighth graders are welcome to join that team. It typically starts before the school year starts in early August, which is kind of nice. Your child can come on campus. And then our sixth graders are also eligible to participate in wrestling. And both wrestling and cross country are co-ed sports. As a seventh and eighth grader, your child can try out for basketball, or perhaps the volleyball team, or maybe cheerleading or POMs. Those are all fun athletic events that your child can get involved with. But really, we do offer a wide variety of clubs and things that will really enrich the middle school experience. It's important to note that for our sports clubs that are tryout events, special education students are encouraged to try out, but they're not guaranteed participation. We often have, for example, our basketball tryouts could have up to 60 kids that try out for those teams. But we do offer two levels, one at seventh grade and one at eighth grade. All right, on to the next slide. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the first piece of the transition process, the meeting that you guys are all listening to right now and getting information. We typically start these this time during winter. And then the sixth grade resource teachers will be meeting very shortly on Zoom meetings this year, but not in person, but with the fifth grade sending team. So we'll get to learn all about your child and who's going to be sent to either Thomas or South. And we'll meet with and kind of look at what their needs are at the elementary building, and your resource teacher will share that with us. And then we kind of work through the process of how their needs would then transition into the middle school and how they can best be met at our school. Because sometimes the accommodations and things don't exactly line up given just what the needs are within the middle school. So we'll be meeting with those starting in March, and this month in February too, depending on Thomas or South when we're doing with that. We'll articulate with the sending school. And then the next part of it would be that we would meet and have a transition meeting with you as the parent. It is an IEP meeting. So those would be starting to happen in March and April, depending on when your sending school would be setting those meetings up with you. They're set dates, and that would be meeting with all of your current support staff from the elementary school. So whatever they have needs in, if it's speech and language or social work or your resource, they would be the team that would be meeting. And then this middle school would be sending a resource representative and an administrator to meet. And typically those are at the sending school. So we would go and meet at the elementary building. Again, we don't know how the spring is going to look, but right now they're all being on Zoom. But if they were in person, we would be going to the elementary school to meet with you. And at that time, you are part of the team as well. So we go over the IEP with you, and then you can also help to make some of those decisions for your child as well. So I think the next, yeah. And the purpose of the transition process is, I know it's a little bit different than just your annual review. Sometimes it can be held together depending on when your child's IEP is due for the annual date. Some of you have already met for the annual date, and this would be an additional IEP meeting. And the transition purpose really is to review the current goals and then review what they're currently receiving as accommodations. And then we revise that minutes page in order to match what they're receiving at the elementary school and how it transitions into the middle school. Because we are on block schedules and different periods, sometimes those minutes do change just because of the virtue of how much minutes per classes and things like that. We also determine the middle school program placement depending on, I know many of your children are in class and out of class. They're in the gen ed for majority of their time, but then they might be pulled out for certain things, and how that would transition to the middle school is a little bit different depending on where their needs are and how we're going to meet those alternative minutes for curriculum and things. The resource teachers typically are their case manager. We try to match up with the team that they're on so that your child will see their resource teacher the most throughout the day. Sometimes they do have to see other teachers for certain classes and things like that, but typically the resource teacher is their case manager as well. And it was said earlier tonight that it does change yearly. So at 6th grade, they'll have one resource teacher, case manager, and it would change for 7th grade and 8th grade. At South, at least the social workers do follow them through. So if they have Mrs. Wildman at 6th grade, she would follow those students then through 7th and 8th grade so that they do have somebody that's consistent, a consistent person for them throughout those 3 years. During the transition process at the end of 6th grade, we do transition them the same way into 7th grade so that their needs continue to be met all through middle school. And then the speech and only students are managed by their speech and language teachers because they would be their case manager.
All right, so we can't stress this enough. This is so important. You and your child, we are going to work with you. You are part of our team. We are together on this. So together, we're going to determine the most appropriate level of support to meet your child's IEP goals at the middle school level. While we bring our experience to the table, you are definitely a participant in the meeting, and your child is as well. We will plan and structure the supports that your child will need in order to help your child be most successful in 6th grade. And then we can also design an individualized transition support plan if that's needed. If you have a child who's feeling, really nervous about making this transition to 6th grade, we can definitely work with you on ways in which we can help your child feel more comfortable in that process. We want you to always remember that the IEP is a fluid document. The class placements, the class schedule, and the minutes will change as needed to help your child reach their individual potential. And we'll work together and we'll be sure to communicate with you on how these supports will be implemented throughout the school day. Hopefully by the start of the year, you'll have a good sense of what your child's day is going to look like, but we'll continue to work with you and communicate with you on those pieces for sure at the start of the year. All right, Dr. Morrison?
Yeah, well, as we start to close this out, we're just very excited to have your children come join us here at South or Thomas to be either a Cardinal or a Wolf. And it's a great opportunity for us to work together to make sure that, as our goal is to have your child have a smooth transition here to the middle school. And it's a wonderful time, but it takes a team to make sure that happens. So feel free to contact your child's teachers here at South or Thomas or the administrative team. If you have any questions, if you'd like to come and see the schools, we're more than welcome to work that out and help, as I said again, smooth that transition coming through. So thank you for partaking in this presentation here.
To reiterate what Dr. Morrison just said, we want to thank you again. There are several individuals that you can reach out to within the Department of Student Services to ask any questions or to assist you in any manner. We have several student services coordinators that are assigned to specific buildings that you most likely will meet when you have your child's transition meetings. So we have Dina Albrecht. She's at Dryden, Ivy, and Olive. Melanie Soprano, who works at Windsor. Diane Kafka, who's at Greenbrier. Kelly Clayson, who is at South and Thomas. Lisa Cramp, who is at Patton and Westgate. And then, of course, you've just met Jim Morrison and Lori Nomowitz. Again, you can feel free to reach out to me as well if you have any questions. This presentation will be on our website, the recorded version, and then also just the presentation itself that you may refer back to so that you can find emails. And there was a question about the Continuum of Services document that will be linked as well, so you can reference that on our website. Throughout the presentation, there were a few questions that were more specific that Lori and I both answered, but at this point, I will open up the Q&A or the chat if anyone has any questions. Right now, we're just getting some thank yous. So again, I want to thank the team for being here, and I want to thank the parents who have joined us this evening, and we wish you very well. Thank you.